Holt Rawlins had ridden this canyon 100 times, but every time the wind cut through the stone walls, he was pulled back to the day he almost died here. Months ago, a flash flood had roared down without warning, a wall of mud and water swallowing the narrow pass. He remembered the helpless tumble, the choking sand, and then the firm grip of a stranger, a native woman, dragging him toward a rock ledge and refusing to let the river take him. She never gave her name. She didn't wait for thanks. She simply steadied him, told him to choose wiser trails, and disappeared into the rising mist. Ever since, Holt carried that moment like a weight on his chest. So when he turned a corner that morning and heard rough voices echoing off the stone, something in him sharpened immediately. He guided his horse behind a boulder and looked down into the clearing below. 3 riders surrounded someone near a fallen log, shouting, accusing, demanding answers. The person they cornered stood with a quiet, unshaken posture, her braids lifting slightly in the breeze. Her eyes steady despite the rifles pointed her way. Holt's breath caught. He knew her. The same woman who had hauled him from the flood was now facing trouble alone. One of the riders grabbed her arm, insisting she reveal where her tribe kept their wild horses. She said nothing, just met his anger with silence, and Holt felt a surge of guilt that he was watching from cover while she stood unprotected. Before he had time to think through consequences, he nudged his horse forward and rode out into the open, lifting one hand as dust swirled under his boots. "Stop, I'll pay!" he shouted, his voice cracking through the canyon. The riders jerked their heads toward him in surprise. Holt kept riding down the slope slowly, hoping to keep them focused on him and not on her. The woman's eyes flicked toward him, not in fear but in calm disapproval, as if she was silently asking why he had stepped into her fight. Holt didn't know what plan he had, didn't know what these men wanted or how far they'd go. But he knew one thing clearly: he would not leave her to face danger alone when she once kept him alive. Everything else he would figure out second by second, breath by breath, if that's what it took to protect her. Tension rolled through the canyon like heat off desert stone as Holt dismounted slowly, palms facing upward to show he carried no threat. The 3 riders traded amused looks, clearly entertained by the idea that when Cowboy had stepped forward to bargain for someone who wasn't even calling for help. Holt kept his voice steady as he said he would pay anything for them to leave her alone, offering supplies, gear, whatever he had. The leader laughed, a sharp, mocking sound that bounced off the cliff walls, and demanded $50 in cash. Holt felt his stomach sink. He didn't have that much coin on him, and they likely knew it. But he had everything else that mattered in a cowboy's life: his rifle, his rope, his saddle gear, and his carefully packed supplies. One by one he lowered them onto the ground, hoping the gesture would buy the woman enough safety to walk away without a fight. The riders' greedy eyes flicked between the gear and Holt, clearly calculating what they could resell. Behind them the woman remained still, neither stepping toward Holt nor pleading for the men to release her. She stood with a calm, unshaken composure, watching every detail like someone who had learned long ago that panic never saved anyone. Holt could feel her gaze on him when she finally spoke, quietly telling him he didn't owe her anything. He answered without looking back, insisting that he owed more than she knew. The leader stepped forward, preparing to grab Holt's gear, when a sharp crack echoed through the clearing, a branch snapping behind the riders. Every head turned. 2 older native men emerged silently between the trees, carrying no raised weapons but wearing expressions that made it clear they were not afraid. The riders stiffened, suddenly unsure if this canyon belonged to them after all. The leader cursed under his breath, hurriedly grabbed Holt's gear, and swung onto his horse, signaling the others to retreat before things went badly for them. Their horses thundered away, leaving dust hanging in the air. As the sound faded, Holt felt the adrenaline drain from his muscles, replaced by shaky relief. The woman stepped closer, studying him with a calm, assessing look, and told him he had risked much. Holt shook his head, saying it was nothing compared to what she once did for him. For a moment, surrounded by quiet stone and fading dust, there was only mutual respect. 2 people who had saved each other in different ways, bound by choices neither had expected to make. The canyon slowly returned to silence once the riders vanished, leaving only drifting dust and the low murmur of wind against the rocks. Holt stayed where he was for a moment, steadying his breathing, as the two older native men approached the woman with quiet familiarity. Their presence explained why she had shown no fear. She had never actually been alone. Holt stepped back respectfully, not wanting to intrude, but the woman gestured lightly for him to stay. She finally introduced herself as Nara, the name carrying a gentle strength that matched the way she carried herself. Holt replied with his own name, realizing they had shared danger before even knowing who the other was. Nara explained that her group was traveling west towards safer grazing lands, moving carefully after hearing reports of trouble between ranch hands and various tribal camps. The three riders had been part of a gang stealing tribal horses to sell for profit, and this wasn't the first time they had tried to corner someone to get information. Holt frowned at that, anger rising at the thought of people using threats to take what wasn't theirs. Nara's uncle added that the gang would likely keep searching, but now they knew the trail wasn't unwatched and wouldn't be so bold near this canyon again. Holt hesitated before offering to walk with them to the next ridge, explaining that the valley ahead could be rough with loose shale and unpredictable drops. He didn't offer protection, just company through a hard stretch of land. Nara studied him quietly, reminding him with a calm smile that she had once pulled him from death and could handle a ridgeline. But she accepted his offer anyway, saying that an extra pair of watchful eyes was never unwelcome. They traveled together at a steady pace, the sunlight shifting on the canyon walls as they climbed. Holt listened more than he talked, learning small details of the land that he had never noticed: how certain plants pointed where water collected after rain, how animal tracks could warn of nearby predators, how the wind changed pitch when a storm hid behind the horizon. By the time they reached the ridge, Holt felt he understood this land in a deeper way because of her guidance. At the top, Nara paused and pointed to the long, winding path that led west, saying their trail separated from his from this point onward. Holt removed his hat in a respectful gesture and told her that if she or her people ever needed help again, he would ride without hesitation. Nara nodded, accepting the promise without binding him to anything. With a final quiet glance, she and her group began their descent, leaving Holt alone with the sweeping view and the sense that the choices they made today had tied their paths together in ways words didn't need to explain.